Don't necessarily have to be the biggest star. As long as you come with it and people coming out, they like to see live performances because it's a savvy audience.
San Francisco, are you ready? I don't think we can hear you. Are you ready?
Dave Chappelle is not just a comedian, he's a cultural force, a man whose voice resonates beyond laughter, piercing the veil of societal norms with brutal honesty and sharp wit. But his journey has been anything but easy, from humble beginnings in Washington, D.C. to global stardom, and his shocking departure from Hollywood. Dave Chappelle's story is one of artistic integrity, industry battles, and an unrelenting pursuit of truth.
Right here in town. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a nice warm welcome to Dave Chappelle.
Well, yeah, I started when I was 14. That's when I figured it all out.
Originally, my plan was I'll go to school, and then after I graduate, I'll start stand-up. But then I was like, I'm going to the club after school. It's Tuesday, so I'm going to go to that open mic night. I had been practicing with the candlestick in the mirror. I felt like I was ready. And I told my family I was going. Told my mom, I'm going. I don't want you to come. I want to go by myself. It's something I got to do, and whatever. So, of course, she shows up with my grandmother and my brother. I told my grandmother, like, you might hear me say some things that you might not want to hear your grandson say. And she said, just relax and do that shit. I said, whoa. I never heard her.
Born in 1973, Dave discovered stand-up comedy at the age of 14. Even as a teenager, he displayed a rare poise and confidence that left seasoned comedians in awe. By 15, he was already writing jokes that impressed his peers, but an early encounter with an older comedian stealing his material opened his eyes to the harsh realities of the industry. It was the first of many battles he would face, but it would not be the last time someone tried to take what was rightfully his.
All right, here's the story. I started doing stand-up comedy when I was 14. I'll never forget the first time I was on stage. The guy that introduced me was a guy named J.T. Newton. I'm 47. I can close my eyes and remember the introduction like it was yesterday. It went like this. Ladies and gentlemen, this next young man coming to the stage is starting his comedy career tonight. Who knows? We may be witnessing the birth of a star. Please welcome Dave Chappelle. From the first time that I ever held a microphone, I was sure this was it. I knew I was home. I knew I had found my thing. And my God, man, I was a child. I got good. Matter of fact, I was good from the moment I started. And I'm not saying this to be a braggart. I'm telling you the truth. These old niggas was in awe of me. How is this little boy so poised? They used to say. I was. I mean, I got better, but it started out good. About a year into it, when I was 15 years old, I had written a joke during the AIDS epidemic about having a Goodyear condom. Something, I don't even remember the joke. Something about an industrial strength condom by Goodyear. I just remember all the comedians really liked that joke. And there was an older comedian. And he came to me one night after the show, after he saw the joke, and he said, listen, I got an audition at another comedy club, and I was wondering, do you mind if I do that joke? I just want to borrow it. Now, I'm a kid. I don't know any better. I'm like, borrow it? Well, I guess, sure, if it'll help your career. I let him do the joke. And then weeks later, I was waiting to go on in a comedy club, and he went on before me, and he did the joke. And after the show, I pulled him aside, and I said, hey, man, I don't mind you borrowing my jokes, but you got to give them back. He said, oh, I forgot to ask you. He goes, let me buy that joke from you for $50. And I said, man, I'd do it, but I'm just starting out. I need all the material I can get. The idea being that the more material I can accumulate, the faster I'll be able to make money for my work. I said, I can't do it. I want my joke back. I'll never forget this. Remember, I was a 15-year-old child. This guy was a grown-ass man. He stood up over me so I could see how big he was. And he said to me, really? I can just take it. And he did. I got scared because I was a child. But I never forgot that. I never forgot that. I was 15 years old. I'm 47 now. I think about this guy all the time. When I look at my own kids and I see how young and innocent they are, I can't believe someone did that to me. And I don't think about it every day because that was the worst thing that happened to me. I think about it every day because that was the first time that someone ever did that to me. But in my career, it has happened many, many times since, where someone would intimidate me or scare me and take something that I believe was mine. I'll tell you another story. Now I'm 18 years old. I'm living in New York City, and I just finished my first road tour, which was a very difficult tour. I'll spare you the details. Now I'm back in New York, but my rent is paid, thank God. And I have $60 to my name, and a woman that I had met in Pittsburgh, a bad Dominican bitch, was coming to New York. She was gonna spend the weekend with me. I couldn't wait for her to get there. She was coming that evening. But remember, I only had $60 for a whole weekend to entertain a bad bitch. Now I'm walking through Greenwich Village, and I see something I've never seen before. 3-card Monte. You know what that is? Yeah, the guy had the whole thing. The table was set up, and he had the 3 cards, and the crowd was hooting and hollering, and he was like, find the red card, find the red card, and people were playing. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, but it was really exciting, and I'm standing there watching it, and I noticed while I'm watching them play this game that the red card, the one you're trying to find, had just a little bend on the corner. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, yo, this guy doesn't seem to know that red card is bent. I'm gonna beat this motherfucker. And I walked up to the table, and I said, let me play a hand. And I put my last $60 on that table, and he starts to shuffle and find the red card, find the red card. And I kept watching that bent card go around the table, make sure I kept my eyes on that bent card. And when he stopped shuffling, and he said, find the red card, I pointed to it with confidence. Here it is right here. And he flipped it over, and it was black. And he took my money. I couldn't fucking believe that. How did this nigga do that? Was that magic or sorcery? I was confused. So you know what I did? I sat there and I watched him for a real long time play the game. And I realized that all those people who was doing all that hooting and hollering and betting, my God, they were his friends. They were in on the whole thing. I felt so wronged. I felt so stupid. And then the next sucker came up to the table and was about to put his money down. And I said, fuck that, man. Don't put your money there. All these niggas is in on it. It's a trick. And when I said that, the guy that was dealing, and this motherfucker was huge, snatched me up by my collar. Feel how strong he was when he grabbed me. I was a skinny little guy. And he was gonna maul me. And the only reason he didn't, I'm sure, is because he saw the fear in my face. And that fear, he looked at me. I saw his eyes go from hard to soft. He softened. Then he looked at me like the way a father would look at a child. And he said to me, young man, don't ever come between a man and his meal. I never forgot that either. Most niggas would have to run the streets for years to learn a lesson that profound. It took me 2 seconds. Never get between somebody and their paper. Taking a man's livelihood away from him is akin to killing him. Do you know why Prince, the famous rock star that was a friend of mine, do you know why he called himself the artist when he came back? He calls himself the artist because that's what they call us in our contracts. Oh, these contracts are crazy. You should hear the terminology they say in these contracts. To use your name and likeness in perpetuity throughout the universe. Who the fuck could possibly know what that means? Nobody does. It's so complicated, in fact, that when you're a kid like me, you have to hire somebody to tell you what that means. And you sit down at a table and you do the JT introduced me. He said, folks, everybody's got to start somewhere. And tonight, this young man is starting here. I remember it like it was yesterday. He said, you might be witnessing the birth of a star. Please welcome Dave Chappelle.
And I went up there, man, and I was scared. And I used to look at my feet when I started. And I said the first joke, looking down at my feet, and they laughed. And I looked up like, holy. And I looked back down at my feet and said, no. And after the set, the crowd was going crazy. I think I did 2.5 minutes, but they were going crazy. I was 14, probably looked like I was 11. I was telling jokes about Jesse Jackson running for president, and Alf spaceship landing in the black neighborhood. I said, I'm gonna go to that Apollo and rip that mug. I went for the regular Wednesday amateur night. When I say I got booed off stage, I still remember that boo. I'd never been booed off stage before, but I just remember looking out and seeing like everybody booing, everybody. Even old people, I was like, who boos a child pursuing his dreams? Like, this is the meanest crowd in the world. And that siren went off, and a dude comes out tap dancing, Sandman. I wanted to choke the shit out. I hate you. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Best thing, because before that time, I had never bombed, let alone got booed off stage. And bombing was horrifying. Nobody wants to bomb. Nobody, when people say you do comedy, what happens if nobody laughs? I don't know. So that night was liberating because I failed so far beyond my wildest nightmares of failing that it was like, hey, they're all booing. My friends are here watching, my mom. This is not that bad. And after that, I was fearless.
Chappelle's comedic style was deeply influenced by legendary comedians such as Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, and George Carlin. Their ability to mix humor with raw social commentary inspired young Dave to develop his own voice. He honed his craft by performing at local clubs, and by the time he graduated high school, he had already made a name for himself in the Washington, D.C. comedy scene. Encouraged by his mother, he moved to New York City to chase his dream.
Now the challenger. At 19, he's the youngest comedian in Star Search history. From Washington, D.C., here is Dave Chappelle.
Thank you. You guys notice Batman never fights crime in neighborhoods that need it. I mean, really, I would love to see Batman fight crime in my neighborhood. I can see now just robbing. Yes, Batman. Didn't we park the car right here, man? I mean,
Take terrorism, for example. That's pretty good. A terrorist has never taken a black hostage in the history of the world. You will never see a black guy on the news reading one of those letters. They is treating us good. Never. It's true. You know why they don't take black hostages? Why? Because we're bad bargaining chips. They would call up the White House, hello, we have got 5 black people, and we will, hello?
It's like I feel stuck here, yo. I'm glued to the floor.
Chappelle's rise in the entertainment industry was marked by moments of brilliance and deep disillusionment. His early breakthrough came with Half-Baked, 1998, a film he co-wrote with Neil Brennan. While it became a cult classic, Chappelle was dissatisfied with how the film turned out. Foreshadowing future struggles with creative control, he pitched television shows to major networks, only to be met with racial skepticism and calls for compromises he refused to make. But then came the opportunity that changed everything, the Chappelle Show on Comedy Central.
Dave gave me a career. We met in 1992 at a comedy club in New York City. We wrote a few jokes together over the years, but I'd always hoped we could do something bigger. Then in 1997, Dave calls me and goes, hey, if Universal reaches out to you, tell them we're writing a weed movie together. And I was like, what weed movie? And Dave said, don't worry about it. Next thing I know, someone from Universal calls me and asks, are you writing a weed movie with Dave Chappelle? And I was like, yes. And they go, when can you pitch it to us? And I was like, in 30 days' time. So we had a month to figure the pitch out, and finally on day 29, I called Dave, and I'm like, dude, we got to work this weed movie out. And he goes, what weed movie? Anyhow, the day before the pitch, we outlined Half-Baked. It took the full day, about 16 hours, and that attention to detail really showed up on screen.
I liked smoking weed so much that I thought I should make a movie about this. And suddenly, we had this story, this weird story about killing a police horse and needing to raise money, and it was really weird. My 24th birthday was coming on August the 24th, and I said, this is going to be a big one. And the morning that I turned 24, phone rang, and my sister was like, Dad had a stroke. For the next year, I watched my father teeter on life and death. And it was just all this stuff, man. Like Dad was dying, the Half-Baked didn't come out the way I wanted it to come out. I was real upset about that. Because it was a real cool script, and then I saw it, I was like, hey man, you made a weed movie for kids. And it wasn't for kids, the script, you know. It was all these things, so much pressure. Africa. Then
Debuting in 2003, Chappelle's Show was an instant success, blending edgy humor with sharp social commentary. Iconic sketches like Charlie Murphy's True Hollywood Stories and the racial draft cemented its place in comedy history. The show was a ratings juggernaut, generating millions for Comedy Central. But behind the scenes, Chappelle was growing increasingly frustrated. He saw the industry as a rigged game, much like the 3-card Monty scam he once fell for in New York. The bigger his show got, the less control he felt he had. What many didn't know was that Chappelle was facing immense pressure, not just from network executives, but from the cultural impact of his sketches. The popularity of characters like Rick James and Clayton Bigsby led to audiences shouting catchphrases at him wherever he went, reducing his work to mere sound bites rather than deep satire. In a pivotal moment during a stand-up performance in Sacramento, fans repeatedly yelling his catchphrase, drowning out his set. It was in that moment he realized that his audience wasn't always laughing for the reasons he intended. When Comedy Central offered him a $50 million contract for another season, Chappelle shocked the world when he walked away. He left Hollywood, moved to South Africa, and disappeared from the public eye, leaving fans and industry insiders bewildered. Rumors spread. Was he crazy? Was he on drugs? The truth was simpler. He refused to be another pawn in the system.
I get a call on my cell phone from Hollywood. I'm like, hello, Hollywood. They're like, hello, Dave. They're like, that pilot you did for Fox, looks like they want to pick it up. We need you to come out because they want to meet with you. And I was like, well, listen, I can't really come out right now. Got a real bad situation at home. Can we talk about this on the phone? No, they would rather meet with you in person. But you know, like the horror that they turned us into, I jumped on that plane and left my father's bedside, which I regret to this day, and I went out and I sat with these people in this room.
If you can imagine, I was the only black person in the room, and they basically told me that we'll pick up the show, but we want more white characters on it. For no other reason than they thought that it would give the show a more universal appeal. And so I quit.
Did you accuse them of racism?
Absolutely. It was racist. Look, I don't think these people sit around their house and call black people niggas and all this kind of thing, but the idea that unless I have white people around me on my show that it's unwatchable or doesn't have a universal appeal is racist. You know, they don't make them put black people on Friends, or they don't make them put black people on Seinfeld. But all of a sudden I get in the room and it's like, well, where's all the white people?
And then, a few months later, Dad dies. And that's hard for a young dude in his life. That's a real tough loss. I was there when he died. And he went from being my father to what are we going to do with the body? Within moments, it was over. And I'm going through all this stuff, and this is the guy I would usually talk to, right? Dad. And I got to figure this out for myself. I don't want to figure this out for myself. Look, man, at that point in your life, it's something so real in contrast to what Hollywood is, a very powerful illusion. And when your dad died, it kind of just broke the spell, like, oh, this is bullshit. Look, I've been spending so much time doing this. What about my family? What about my friends? Wait, whatever happened to my friends? Damn, I don't even have any friends. Ugh. So I bounced, man. New Year's Eve, 1999, I moved into that farm, and that was it. As far as I was concerned, I was done with show business.
Years later, Chappelle resurfaced, not with a show, but with a message. He exposed how the entertainment industry exploits artists, using unfair contracts to strip them of their rights. His battle with ViacomCBS over Chappelle's show streaming rights became a defining moment in his career. He called on his fans to boycott the show until he was paid, and they listened. Netflix, a company he admired for its transparency, honored his request and removed the show. Eventually, ViacomCBS relented, paid Chappelle, and returned his rights. Chappelle's fight for ownership was reminiscent of struggles faced by black artists throughout history. He often referenced Prince, who famously rebelled against Warner Brothers, and Paul Mooney, a mentor to Chappelle who had long warned of the industry's exploitation of black talent. Chappelle's actions were not just about his own finances, but about setting a precedent for future artists to demand fair treatment.
And that's how I got with Comedy Central. I signed the contract. But I signed the contract the way that a 28-year-old expectant father that was broke signs a contract. I was desperate, I needed a way out, and it wasn't good money, and it wasn't good circumstances, but what else am I gonna do, I said. And all these white people sitting at that table told me, trust us, Dave, it's a good contract. And I looked around the table, and they all seemed to agree it was a good contract. But what if it was like that game of three-card Monte? What if they were all friends and I didn't know it? And the bag of money was Iceberg's money in the first place, what was I talking about? What was I trying to tell you? Last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, I call Lauren Michaels and I tell him, okay, I'll do it. I'll do Saturday Night Live on election night. And the day I made that phone call, the day I committed to it, it gets announced that Netflix is streaming Chappelle Show. Not just Netflix, HBO Max is streaming it too. Let me tell you another story about HBO. No, hear me out. Did you know, before Chappelle Show was at Comedy Central, I pitched that show to HBO. I told them what I wanted to do. Now, these are executives. All they have to do is say, yeah, we'll take it, or no, thank you, we won't. But they didn't say either of those things. They went too far. They said, literally, what do we need you for? That's what they told me, as they kicked me out of the office. What do we need you for? And here we are, all these years later, and they're streaming the very show that I was pitching to them. So I'm asking them, what do you need me for? People think I made a lot of money for Chappelle Show. When I left that show, I never got paid. They didn't have to pay me because I signed the contract. But is that right? I found out that these people were streaming my work and they never had to ask me or they never had to tell me. Perfectly legal because I signed the contract. But is that right? I didn't think so either. That's why I like working for Netflix. I like working for Netflix because when all those bad things happened to me, that company didn't even exist. And when I found out they were streaming Chappelle Show, I was furious. How could they not know? So you know what I did? I called them and I told them that this makes me feel bad. And do you want to know what they did? They agreed that they would take it off their platform just so I could feel better. That's why I fuck with Netflix, because they paid me my money, they do what they say they're gonna do, and they went above and beyond what you could expect from a businessman. They did something just because they thought that I might think that they were wrong. And I do. I think if you are fucking streaming that show, you're fencing stolen goods. They stole that from me. They just took it. And I'm not up here trying to tell you guys that I believe that Comedy Central gave me a raw deal just because I'm black. I believe that they gave me a raw deal because this fucking industry is a monster. It's the same monster that these Me Too bitches was trying to tell you about. But they hate the monster for how it fucks. And I hate that monster for how it eats. But my God, man, it's the same monster. When I quit the show, all my friends would say, well, fuck them, Dave. Why don't you just do Chappelle Show at another network? Yeah. And why doesn't a slave run from one plantation to another plantation because the master over there might be nicer? My God, man, I was trapped. You know what? Tell you the truth. I've even thought about coming back and doing another Chappelle Show. Well, but if I do, I can't call it Chappelle Show because my name and likeness is being used by them in perpetuity throughout the universe. It's in the contract. You're not supposed to do this in my business. I'm up here doing something that nobody else in this business has the balls to do. I'm telling you something that you need to know. I'm trying to explain to you what you're seeing. You don't understand what you're seeing. I am publicly flogging a network. And I know that this network niggas, they watching me and they saying, why are you doing this so publicly? Doesn't feel good to be flogged publicly. Oh, believe me, I know. I know exactly how that feels. When I quit my show, they said I was crazy. What was crazy about it? I just didn't want to do it anymore. They said I smoked crack. That's impossible. I was a devout Muslim. I didn't smoke or drink. But I do now, bitch, because you ruined my fucking life. Now it's their turn. This is their first nigga lesson, and I'm honored to give it to them. They're gonna pay me for this show. I called my agent. I said, is there anything I can do about this show? And he said, no. Well, fuck you too then. If you want something done right, I guess you gotta do it yourself. So I'm not going to the agents. I'm coming to my real boss. I'm coming to you. I'm begging you. If you ever liked me, if you ever think there was anything worthwhile about me, I'm begging you, please don't watch that show. I'm not asking you to boycott any network. Boycott me. Boycott Chappelle Show. Do not watch it unless they pay me. If you're a shareholder at Viacom, then I'm talking to you. Because all that shit that they do to us, well, they do everything for their shareholders. That's what they told me. So if you're a shareholder in that company, tell them it's wrong. And if you don't believe that it's wrong, then fuck you too. You should know what's in the hot dogs you eat. Now, there's probably a bunch of people at Comedy Central and Viacom and all these places that have no idea what I'm talking about. They've all either quit or been fired or got Me Too'd or something. Them niggas is gone. And there's a whole bunch of new young people there, and they're probably looking like, what is he talking about? They may not actually know what the fuck happened to me. So I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Go downstairs to your accounting department, open the books, see what that show made, and look at what you paid me. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're going to pay me. I am inviting you to come with me and work with me, and let's fight against that terrible, terrible feeling that you made me feel together. We can fight together and work this thing with Chappelle Show out. Or I can just take it. Thank you.
Chappelle's return to stand-up was nothing short of legendary. His Netflix specials, including Sticks and Stones and The Closer, sparked widespread debate, tackling topics from race and cancel culture to gender identity. He became a lightning rod for controversy, but he never wavered. Whether you love him or loathe him, Chappelle remains a comedian who refuses to be silenced.
Dave is a smart guy, man. He figured it out. He figured out where was slipping away when they were fucking with him when he was doing the Chappelle Show. And he was like, you know what? Let me just sit back for a bit. Sit back for a bit.
If you were a superhero, Dave, what would be your superpower?
Disappearing for long periods of time.
That's some of our favorite stories, though, or someone who comes back. Like Dave Chappelle's a perfect example of that. The way he did it, the way he walked away for 10 years and then came back and immediately went right to the top.
However, his return was not without struggle. In 2021, he faced a major backlash from LGBTQ+ activists, over his jokes about transgender individuals. Netflix employees staged a walkout in protest, demanding the removal of his special The Closer, but Netflix, in a rare move for a corporation, defended Chappelle's artistic freedom and refused to take down his work. Chappelle responded to the criticism with his usual wit, stating that his problem had never been with transgender people, but rather with corporate interests using identity politics to control narratives. Beyond comedy, Chappelle has used his platform for activism and philanthropy. He has been a vocal supporter of his hometown, Yellow Springs, Ohio, investing in local businesses and advocating for social justice. His powerful speech after the murder of George Floyd, titled 846, showcased his ability to blend comedy with profound social commentary, reinforcing his status as one of the most important voices of this generation. Dave Chappelle is more than just a comedian. He's a symbol of artistic freedom and resilience. His story is one of sacrifice, courage, and the relentless pursuit of truth. As long as there are voices trying to suppress uncomfortable conversations, there will always be a place for Dave Chappelle standing on stage, holding a mic, and telling it like it is. His journey serves as both a cautionary tale and an inspiration, a reminder that in an industry built on contracts and control, true artists must be willing to walk away in order to stay true to themselves. Whether he's making us laugh, challenging our perceptions, or standing up against corporate exploitation, Dave Chappelle remains one of the most compelling figures in modern entertainment.